So I'm here at the Natural History Museum, at their wonderful collection, and considering the issue of how many species are there on Earth. So it's easy. For birds, we know there's about 11,000, but I'm here with Erica McAlister, who I suspect will have differing views and be rude about birds.
It's not birds' fault, there's just not many of them. So, birds, there's 11,000. Mammals, there's about 6,500. But just to put it into context, there's more described species of fly in the UK than there are mammals on the planet. So I believe at the current estimate there's 5,270 flies, give or take a few species here and there, that have been described in the UK.
But then the question is, how many are there on Earth? And there's a whole set of estimates. It's remarkable how varied they are. People have sort of swept trees in the Amazon and then expanded from that. They've expanded from the number of known species, various other methods. But I don't know, 5 to 30 million or whatever.
There is. So there was a recent paper that came out of, relatively recent paper that came out of Canada, and they were looking at the number of described species in Canada versus the number of specimens in museums, for example, and then they put out new traps, these Malaise traps, where they collected in a lot more insect material, and they compared the described to all these new species they were finding in the Malaise traps. And yes, there were two families that they realised were two orders of insects that were massively under-described, and those were Hymenoptera, the bees, the wasps, ants, and the Diptera, the true flies. And within the true flies, there was a family called Southend-on-Sea, these little ones here. Now, I think you can just take a look at them to understand why there's issues in describing them, because, can you see them? Can you? They are little, tiny, tiny little flies. And these are called the gall midges, Southend-on-Sea, and they extrapolated from their data that just this one family of fly globally had 1.8 million specimens. So we don't think that's necessarily true, but it shows you that there's a lot more for us to describe.
So it seems there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty as to how many species we have. So as I said, 10 million is a guess, but we're not entirely sure. And on what these species are.
Yeah, so within the Diptera and the Hymenoptera, it's amusingly called the dark taxa now. So we know that, for example, beetles are the most described insect. 400,000 beetles have been described, whereas we've only got about 185,000 described species of fly. But if we know that in the UK there's 4,000 species of beetle and we know there's 7,000 species of fly, we know that there's a lot of missing these dark taxa that we've got to go.
But new technologies might be able to help.
Yes, and this is what's helping us, because these ones are problematic. So traditionally it's morphological. So we would look at the shape, the form, we would look at the veins, we would look at the texture, we would look at the hairs, we would look at the different position of the eyes. All of these help us describe. But another way of helping us describe is looking at their DNA. So we're looking at molecular. So these are mosquitoes that I have washed and blow dried, as everyone does with mosquitoes these days. And we've been, with the help of Sanger, who've developed some really nice techniques, a way without destroying the specimens, we've been able to extract genome. So this is really important, so we can look at barcodes, like specific regions along the genome, which are highly conservative. So we know if the barcodes are different, then we've probably got a different species, or we can look at the whole genome, which tells us way more about that. Now, this is not the be-all and end-all. People are like, oh, molecular can now replace morphology. No. So we have to think about them all in relation. We have to work together, which is why collections are incredibly important.
Well, they're obviously incredibly important, and insects obviously the big missing gap amongst these groups. But then we have the nightmare of the bacteria and the fungi.
Well, I mean, fungi scares me. Fungi scares me. I don't know how fungi people begin to identify, even when finding out things like lichens. And lichens is this communal organism. It has different groups living together, and it's the ratio of those species within this lichen that also help. So you have all these different factors, and this kind of throws against us really what is a species.
And then bacteria exchanging, evolving rapidly, but then exchanging DNA with each other.
Yes.
That makes the whole thing a nightmare. But some people claim there might be 1 billion species. I think an awful lot depends on what you consider a species in that case.
Exactly, or maybe just one. That would be easier.
So, So it's clear the biodiversity of life is enormous. We've only scratched as to what it consists of, but it's great, the work that you're doing.
Thank you.